Welcome to the TIMFD podcast. Today is my favorite day is about appreciating every day as it comes, no matter what life throws at us. We hope that this podcast speaks to you. And if it does, please like, share, and comment. Now let's find out why today is our favorite day this week.
Welcome to the TIMFD podcast. We have Mark and Randy here, and we're going to discuss the topic, isn't the church full of hypocrites? And our answer is...
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Absolutely. So good podcast.
Yeah,
good job.
you.
Good job. Good job. We
Come
feel good
join
about
us.
that. Yeah, you can always add another, right?
Always use one more, right?
Okay, so beyond that, we just wanted to be weird. And by the way, I want you to show off your socks real quick. Randy always has interesting socks. These are like flowers with like
cranes and
stuff on it. And then if you see Pastor Mark, he is always with his, like he has his workout stuff ready to go. And then my wife always has me with no socks. So that's kind of the combination of people. So we just want to laugh a little bit because this is a not so easy subject. It's not. It's hard at times.
Yeah.
But we do want to deal with the word itself, and then we'll get into some biblical side of this. But hypocrites is the Greek word, and it means an actor, someone pretending to be a part of something.
Right.
Do you know? And they're pretending, and it's like a mask.
Yes.
And Mark, you brought up. So you guys both brought up when I said it's like a mask. What did that kind of remind you of?
Oh, virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling. Can you explain what that is?
Virtue signaling is when people will adopt very, very publicly and very stridently, they'll adopt positions that they think make them look better than they really are. Oh. So it's, they're projecting a false sense of moral superiority, for instance.
Okay, moral superiority. And then looking down at someone.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, almost to like shame you into compliance. Like during COVID, they would put those things on their, I'm vaccinated or whatever.
Oh, yes.
Or, during the BLM stuff, they'd have the black square.
Oh, yeah, on
now
social
it's
media.
the Ukrainian flag.
Yeah,
and it's like, and if you don't have it,
you're a horrible person.
Yeah, you're a horrible person.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's just not right. And so what we want to do is just talk about this because this was a question that was brought up from some of our younger people in our church that we asked them to give us some questions, and this was one of the questions. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what Jesus talked about when it came to being a hypocrite. So if you can kind of explain that, Randy.
Right. Well, as you mentioned, the Greek, and using a sort of a contemporary example, right? Because you had the Greek influence in that part of the world, and as you pointed out, they would wear masks. They would actually literally wear masks and play a different character, different from the person behind the mask, and that's essentially what being a hypocrite is. I'm projecting one image, like this moral, perfect, person, and where in reality, I'm not.
And don't you see that? Before we get into that. I know in pastor world, that's a real problem because the guys believe that they have to have that mask,
right?
Because if they don't, they can get fired from their church if the people really knew what was going on in their life, right? And that was something that Tanya and I had to get a little bit used to. We understand it. We don't agree with it. But I do understand the fear that they would have.
Can I make a side observation? One of the things that drew my wife and I to this church, but over 10 years ago now, was the fact that you weren't like that.
Well, I mean, because I know I'm a bozo and I'm a sinner.
You were transparent.
Yeah.
You lived life in the open. You admitted your faults and your failures, and one part of me was a little bit disturbed by that because I've come up in the church world. I've never seen a pastor who admitted that he made mistakes, that he did things wrong,
a lot of them,
that he needed prayer in a particular area of his existence. But Faith and I said, I'd rather follow a man like that I can trust, that's being honest, sometimes painfully honest. Yeah. Because I know he's not being a hypocrite.
Well, I think there's a little more freedom in it.
Yeah.
And that's what Tanya and I saw when we went to our first pastors meeting when we came here 28 years ago, and we went to a pastor's kind of lunch, and we sat at the table, and nothing wrong with the guys there, and their wives are there. And we started talking to them, and someone said, so how are things going? And I looked at them and said, things suck right now. And they looked at me because they were all talking about all the numbers they're doing, all this great stuff happening and everything going on. And I'm going, man, we're getting decimated. And when we were in the schools, we said it was hard. The amount of money we had to pay just to be in there for 5 hours. And the attacks we were getting back because we were standing on biblical truths and some things. It just went, it's hard. And we're going, man, I'm so glad you guys have this, but we don't have that. And you know what happened? Those stories that they were telling us,
they changed.
They started changing when we were sitting there. And one actually got uncomfortable. One couple got uncomfortable. But that's all we know because that's life. And so for me, that's the only way to live because, again, and Charlie Kirk was like that. Go back to Charlie again. But Charlie Kirk, long ago, it was probably 6-7 years ago, he was talking to a lady that was in the sexual business, sex business. And he made sure to say, no, we're all sinners. I'm not looking at you as like I'm higher than you. And he brought up, I struggled with porn when I was younger. And I had to give that over to the Lord. And then he brought up the story of the woman that you have brought up before, which was the woman that was caught in an adulterous relationship and the people were about to stone her. Jesus said, whoever has no sin at all, cast the first stone. Everybody walked away. And then he said the famous line, go and sin no more.
Right.
And that's what he explained to her. And he goes, that's what I had to do with porn. And my suggestion is that's going to be best for you. God's way of doing things best. And so Charlie was willing to be out there and be okay. But the thing that we see biblically, Jesus dealt with he basically was going after people like us.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you explain that whole story?
Oh, well, one thing I would add, just to dovetail on what you two were talking about, here at this church is we have the Celebrate Recovery ministry, and that's all about dealing with people's hurts, habits, and hang-ups, right? We've all got something. Not everybody in the church is in CR, but it is available to you. Yep. It's a place where you can come and be around other believers who have struggled with or are struggling with whatever it is. Yep. We all have something that we're challenged by, and that's how we're trying to keep it real here. Like, we're not super saints. No. We're maybe just a couple steps further down the road than somebody that maybe got saved a couple weeks ago. Right. I got saved when I was 27 years old, so I did a lot of sinning before I got saved. So, And you
were in the military, so there was a lot of crazy.
I was in the military. I was single. And, I was an officer. I had money that and stuff. So, I got into trouble, and so I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm the super saint. No. I'm saved by the grace of God and only by the grace of God. Amen. And so anyway, into hypocrisy. In Jesus's famous Sermon on the Mount, in chapter 6, the 6th chapter, he talks about these people that would do public displays to look at me.
That's
and
right.
Like in 6:2, it was in giving. I give this much. And in 6:5, it was praying. And they would get out and pray in public and, look at me.
Virtue signaling.
And they're fasting, and they're going around with their face hanging. And,
that's right. I forgot about
woe is me, I'm fasting. So they're doing it all. It was all about drawing attention to themselves. Probably the biblical first century version of virtue signaling, right?
It's true. That's what it is.
In verse chapter 7, verse 5, it's like you point out the speck in somebody else's eye, but you ignore the plank in your own eye. It's like you're finding all these. You're finding everything wrong with everybody else, but when you point one finger, there's 3 pointing back at you, right? So just remember that, and then. In chapter 23 of Matthew, he goes on and kind of narrows his focus now more onto the Pharisees and the scribes. Right. Goes over all the same things again: fasting, tithing, praying. You quote scriptures. They would wear these things called phylacteries, where they would wear scripture verses in little boxes on their wrists and their forehead. And it's like, look at me, I'm this super pious, person. And like when Peter was confronted by the religious leaders in Acts, he called them whitewashed tombs.
Yes,
right?
He did.
Because they had the whitewashed exterior, but inside they were, dead men's bones.
Absolutely.
And so, we don't. That's what a hypocrite is. That's somebody that's got this. And as you pointed out in the ministry, I think there's this unrealistic expectation, especially in certain denominations, that our pastor is a super saint. He doesn't sin.
Yep.
And
there's pressure, man.
You know,
feel pressure.
I think the reason why you've seen examples of some of these really, prominent people falling from grace and being caught in sin because they didn't have anybody to go to.
Yeah. No, they didn't.
They couldn't go to who's the pastor's pastor.
Yeah. Who can go to whom?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, hypocrisy is a problem we've had, from Jesus's time, and it happens even still today.
What's funny is that I'll be meeting with Jody tomorrow, and he wanted to talk, but he goes, "Hey, we got to get together." I go, "Yeah, I need to talk," because this has been a pretty stressful time. You and I are doing a podcast today, so you weren't here at 10 o'clock for me to kind of vent a bit on what's going on here, and that's okay because I know you've got a schedule and all that too. So I'm using Jody tomorrow to do that. But we need that. We need people like that, And there's a group of guys that get together during the week. They smoke their stogies and hang out and just kind of talk, right? And they need a vent. And it's like the old, what do you call that? Luther used to do that, the table talks. He'd have his alcohol and his stogie and just sit down and talk. He's not getting drunk, but he's just hanging out, talking with his guys and teaching, but also venting himself. We need that. But yes, go on. And so as far as the hypocrites go, the one that I think, or the one part that I see is the showing off of their faith. Right.
Yeah.
And the virtue signaling. I got to get that in my head. It's not normal for me to think about that. But you're right. And now that you brought that up, on social media, that is gigantic.
Huge.
I didn't realize, I didn't know what that was called. But boy, if you don't act or do exactly what I say, then you're just not it. You're not the in crowd, or you're not the in person. Yeah.
I have to exercise so much self-control when it comes to social media.
Yes.
Because the human side of me could really, I don't want to turn into a keyboard warrior,
No,
and
it's not good.
That's just a bad thing, because you spiral into anger and then hatred and bitterness, and I don't think Jesus would have been on Facebook personally, but that's just me.
Yep.
But if I do put something out there, I try to make it uplifting. I try to make sure that it's inspirational, that it edifies, that it lifts people up.
I've seen some funny stuff.
Humor is something I like to do, but
it's fun.
I stay away from the vitriol.
Yeah, you got to do the positives. I had some younger guy that Colton and Logan. Logan did one of his.
Oh yes, he was in here with you not long ago.
The Bowder kids.
Yeah.
They're not kids anymore, men.
Yeah.
They're in their 20s now, but I've known them since they were little guys. Colton flat out said, he goes, we need more positive things at TikTok. Would you go out there and do at least something? And so I just went, sure, I'll start putting it out there. And lo and behold, people are looking for positive things. Mm-hmm. And not only positive, but straightforward. In some of it, they don't mind if it's in the face, but lovingly, done with truth, and I think people are looking for that kind of stuff. And so, but to go out there and put yourself as super person doesn't work. It just doesn't.
No, and that is what makes you a hypocrite. Is when you start saying, I'm just going to have this flawless, I'm going to lift myself up on this pedestal, and I'm just going to be a shining example to all of humanity. Boy, you're just heading for a fall.
Well, and I've seen this within Christendom over some generations now, because now all of us are, let's just face it, we're older now. Yep. And we've now seen some generations go through. And, what I've seen in those generations is the mistake of when you're on the high. Christendom is in a high place, meaning people are excited about Christ and they're jumping around all over the place. Kind of like what I think was happening right now with what happened with Charlie and what was already going on before Charlie was killed. Charlie Kirk was killed and murdered. There was already a kind of a lifting up. People were getting excited. Number one music artist is Forrest Frank. He has the most YouTube views of any artist in the world. Oh, and wow. He is a Christian artist. Matter of fact, Charlie Kirk talked about that about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before his death. So you have that going on. I just want to caution everybody. as you start feeling good about you and your faith, that's the most dangerous you can be.
Yes.
The most dangerous people I have seen in Christendom over the years, because I was one of them, is thinking I now know the Bible real well because I read it once or twice. And I've read the Bible every year since 1984, and I now know I know very little about who God is, how to live my life. I understand I don't got it together, and I need Jesus bad. And we need to stay in that place. So let's, all the podcasters and people that get out there, and we want them to speak truth. We want them to speak it absolutely and boldly, but do it with major humility. And I believe that Charlie did that. He came out hard and debated, but the people around him said he was one of the most humble guys around. He wasn't looking for the big fame stuff. It just came. And I think that we need to be aware of that as we go into this wave of what I believe is going to be an awesome opportunity to see many people come to Christ. Anything else that you have? Because you had a verse that I know that was big for you.
I wanted to share. Yeah, something that, we were talking about hypocrites. And hypocrites are these people, like we said, that portray this super spiritual persona.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, they're corrupt.
A mess.
And, and they fall. And the Bible warns us that we're going to fall.
Yep.
In fact, the prophet Micah said in chapter 7 and verse 8, "Do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I fall, I will rise again." So what's he doing? He's admitting he's going to fall.
Yep.
But I'm going to rise again. "And though I sit in darkness," and I think we've all had times in our lives where we were sitting in darkness.
Absolutely.
"The Lord will be my light." So that says that, it's not, our hope is not in us.
No.
It's in our relationship with Jesus Christ and with God himself.
Yes.
That's where our hope comes from.
Yeah, that was that verse. It's awesome because it tells us of our life.
Yes.
It tells us of our sinful nature. You brought it up. All sin and fall short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. And it's Jesus who pulls us out of the miry muck, out of,
right.
Is it Psalm 40 or Isaiah? No, Psalm 40. The famous, he pulled me out of the miry clay and put me on a firm rock to stand on. Only God does that. Only him. Anything else?
Yeah, I have one thing that I want to, when you were speaking about how it looks like Christianity's on the upswing, and you got to kind of temper that. You got to take that with a grain of salt. Luke 6:26 says, "Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
"For so did their fathers to the false prophets."
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if everybody likes you, you're probably not telling everybody the truth.
Well, and if everybody likes you, the devil doesn't care.
Well, you're a false prophet.
Yeah, and the devil doesn't care. He just kind of goes, "Okay, let him keep doing what he's doing."
Yeah, you're no threat to me, pal.
Yeah. But
I'll leave you unmolested.
Yeah, and that's gigantic. What about you? Anything else?
Yeah, I would just conduct yourself in a way, and again, the argument that I don't want to go to church because there's so many hypocrites or I don't like church because don't just stop at one church. Visit other ones because there's a continuum like anything, and you're going to get some good ones, you're going to get some not so good ones, and I think we're at least here we try and be authentic and humble, what we hope, and also just, hey, look, we've been there, and as you pointed out, and like in 1 John, it says, if we say we are without sin, we're a liar, and the truth is not in us.
No, it's not.
But it also says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So we're going to stumble, we're going to mess up. And that's where having solid theology is important, because we don't believe in our church that you can lose your salvation. No. So if you're living in fear, oh, gee whiz, I just sinned, and now I got to put on this false persona because if they knew what I really just did, then I'm going to lose my salvation. Well, no, that's not it at all. Jesus is there. He's ready to forgive you. And just understand that none of us are perfect. We're never going to be perfect until we're in eternity.
Yeah. What about yourself? Anything else?
No, I think Randy said it all there.
Yeah, because the whole idea of, hypocrisy in us is the mask of, will I lose my salvation? The mask of, if people really knew who I was, then they would reject me. So there's a fear there too that we put masks on, become hypocrites. Right. And that's not just in the church. That's in any organization or group. That, now that I'm in the group, I got to play what the group think is in there and not be myself.
And shouldn't our goal be for God to say to us someday, welcome?
Yeah.
Well done, good and
well
faithful
done,
servant.
good and faithful servant. And that is a thing that Charlie Kirk's wife put out there.
Amen.
And many have said that with him.
Yeah.
And we have said, well done, good and faithful servant. And that's for all of us. We don't want to be hypocrites.
And that's not men's praise. That's God
No,
himself
that's God saying that.
You
Absolutely.
did well.
Absolutely.
You were faithful. You were a good servant.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
Well, and Paul talking about when he was, 2 Timothy, near the end of it, he's going, I fought the good fight, I finished the race.
Yes.
So, that's something we all want to be able to say. And there's going to be failures. All you have to do is, if you wanted to know if there's any sitting going on, the three of us, just go to our wives and talk to them and say what happened last week with the attitudes, their stuff that goes on with them, right, with all of us. And our wives would say, yeah, they are all sinners. And that's okay. But they also would say, saved by the grace of God, and they're men that are wanting, at least in all of our flaws, to try to become more like Jesus.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the key here, guys. So, feel free in the love of Christ. Jesus says if you obey me, you'll follow my commands. So let's follow him without putting the masks on. And when we're failing and we're struggling, as you said, go get some, go talk to some other people who may be one step ahead of you in a certain area that you may be able to hold on to, and they can hold you as you're going through this. Because, by the way, people have done that for us.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? And so let's do that so we're not hypocrites. But going back to the question, isn't the church full of hypocrites? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we end that by shaking each other's hands and saying, hey, all right, good. We're saved by the grace of God. Yes, we're hypocrites. Saved. God bless you guys. Take it easy.
Thank you for listening to TIMFD, Today is My Favorite Day. Views, comments, and opinions are those of the host and guest alone. TIMFD is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, live intentionally, and be very blessed.